Hi, this is Glenn Farrell with another edition of Read and Talk Health, where we explore the wealth of health counsels and advice in the writings of Ellen G. White, also called the Spirit of Prophecy. Today, we will continue the series on the first health reform vision and the things revealed therein, given in 1863 at the home of Brother A. Hilliard in Otsego, Michigan. I will begin. But first, a word of prayer. Father in heaven, we thank you for your blessings in giving us this health information to instruct and to guide us in the way of truth, that we may present ourselves as living sacrifices, holy and acceptable unto thee. So be with me as I read and comment, and be with those who listen. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, tobacco, in whatever form it is used, it tells upon the Constitution. It is a slow poison. It affects the brain and benumbs the sensibilities so that the mind cannot clearly discern spiritual things, especially those truths which would have a tendency to correct this filthy indulgence. So tobacco, when we talk about tobacco, there are different forms that people use tobacco in. Some people chew tobacco. I've not seen that much in Jamaica. People smoke it in the form of cigarette. This seems to be the most popular way to use the tobacco. But another way that I see people using tobacco is they mix the tobacco with marijuana or ganja and use it to make a spliff. So whatever form we use the tobacco in, it is doing harm to the system, both spiritually and physically. The tobacco is a slow poison. Slow poison. Those who use tobacco in any form are not clear before God. In such a filthy practice, it is impossible for them to glorify God in their bodies and spirits, which are His. And while they are using slow and sure poisons, which are ruining their health and debasing the faculties of the mind, God cannot approbate or approve them. He may be merciful to them while they indulge in this pernicious habit in ignorance of the injury it is doing them. But when the matter is set before them in its true light, then they are guilty before God if they continue to indulge this gross appetite. God required the children of Israel to observe habits of strict cleanliness. So tobacco is not using tobacco, whether chewing it, smoking it, is not a clean thing. The people who smoke cigarette, you can smell it on them. It discolors the gums and the teeth. You know, it is a defiling habit. In any case of the least impurity, they were to remain out of the camp until evening, then to wash themselves and come into the camp. There was not a tobacco user in that vast army, speaking of the children of Israel as they came out of Egypt. If there had been, he would have been required to choose to remain out of the camp or cease the use of the filthy weed. And after cleansing his mouth from the least of its filthy remains, he might have been permitted to mingle with the congregation of Israel. So, anything that was impure or defiling to the children of Israel, if a person were to indulge in that and defile himself, he would be shut out of the camp of the rest of the children of Israel until and then bathe himself before he can come back into the congregation. So some were shut out for a day, some for a week, or even longer. The priests who ministered in sacred things were commanded to wash their feet and their hands before entering the tabernacle in the presence of God to importune for Israel, that they might not desecrate the sanctuary. So cleanliness is always required by God. Cleanliness of the person, physical cleanliness. So when we appear before God, when we go to church to worship Him, God requires that we should be clean. And as well, He requires that we be clean from sin, because sin also defiles us. If the priests had entered the sanctuary with their mouths polluted with tobacco, they would have shared the fate of Nadab and Abihu. And yet, professed Christians bow before God in their families to pray with their mouths defiled with the filth of tobacco. They go to the house which they have dedicated to God, professing to worship Him, with a stupefying quid of tobacco in their mouths, and the high-colored saliva staining their lips and the chin, and their foul breath polluting the atmosphere. They leave their poisonous filth either upon the floor or in receptacles prepared for the purpose. This is the offering they present to God. Instead of the cloud of fragrant incense filling the house, as in the case of the ancient tabernacle, it is filled with the sickening, polluted odor of ejected tobacco spittle and quids, and the air breathed by the congregation is poisoned. So back then, the certain men who either chew tobacco or smoked it, when they go into the house of worship to worship God, their mouth are stained with this tobacco, and they even spit out the polluted spit on the floor of the house of worship. So they were ignorant of this defiling habit. I think it is not so commonplace today, but we still have those who profess to be worshippers of God thinking that it is okay for them to smoke tobacco or to use tobacco in some form. But it is not. Men who have been set apart by the laying on of hands to minister in the sacred things often stand in the desk with their mouths polluted, their lips stained, and their breath tainted with the defilements of tobacco. They speak to the people. So we are talking about the ministers. No. They speak to the people in Christ's stead. How can such service be acceptable to a holy God, who required the priests of Israel to make such special preparations before coming into his presence, lest his sacred holiness should consume them for dishonoring him, as in the case of Nadab and Abihu. These may be assured that the mighty God of Israel is still a God of cleanliness. They profess to be serving God while they are committing idolatry by making a god of their appetite. Tobacco is their cherished idol. To it, every high and sacred consideration must bow. They profess to be worshiping God, while at the same time they are violating the first commandment. So, to many, tobacco is like an idol, because rather than give God their supreme devotion, the tobacco takes first place. The commandment of God is disregarded, and the tobacco is used. They have other gods before the Lord. Quote, "Be ye clean that bear the vessels of the Lord." Unquote. God requires purity of heart and personal cleanliness. Now, as when he gave the special directions to the children of Israel. If God was so particular to enjoin cleanliness upon those journeying in the wilderness, who were in the open air nearly all the time, he requires no less of us who live in sealed houses, where impurities are more observable and have a more unhealthful influence. Tobacco. So we're talking about tobacco. And that includes the tobacco cigarettes that are so widely available today. Tobacco is a poison of the most deceitful and malignant kind, having an exciting, then a paralyzing influence upon the nerves of the body. It is all the more dangerous because its effects upon the system are so slow. So tobacco is a slow poison. It affects the nerves, but it does this slowly, and you hardly realize it, but it is working its ill effects slowly but surely. So those who smoke cigarette, those who use tobacco, who mix it in ganja spliff, are doing themselves a terrible evil. They are killing themselves slowly. It is all the more dangerous because its effects upon the system are so slow and at first scarcely perceivable. Multitudes have fallen victims to its poisonous influence. Remember that this that I'm reading was written in 1864. The evil effects of tobacco that we know of today were not yet so clearly discerned by the people then. So this was way ahead of its time. Remember, the servant of the Lord, Ellen G. White, is writing out, because this that I'm reading is what she has written out based on what the Lord showed her in visions, right? In vision, in the first Health Reform vision given in 1863 at the home of Brother A. Hilliard in Otsego, Michigan. They have surely murdered themselves by this slow poison. And we ask, what will be their waking in the resurrection morning? Right? So, the problem of tobacco. So that is something that as God's people, we should purpose in our heart to avoid. If you're a tobacco user, you should stop. If you smoke cigarette, you should stop. I have church brothers who have just stopped using tobacco, cigarette, just like that. So if you're a user of cigarette, or if you know somebody who smokes cigarette, encourage them to stop, because this is a terrible evil being done to the body, both physically and spiritually. Now we move on to tea and coffee. This is the final thing that I will touch on before we close. So tea and coffee are stimulating. Their effects are similar to those of tobacco. Consider that. But they affect in a less degree. Those who use these slow poisons, like the tobacco user, think they cannot live without them because they feel so very badly when they do not have these idols. So tea and coffee are similar to tobacco in their effects upon the body, but the effects of tea and coffee compared to the effects of tobacco or cigarette cigarette smoking is milder. Why they suffer when they discontinue the use of these stimulants is because they have been breaking down nature in her work of preserving the entire system in harmony and in health. They will be troubled with dizziness, headache, numbness, nervousness, and irritability. They feel as though they should go all to pieces, and some have not courage to persevere in abstaining from them till abused nature recovers, but again resort to the use of the same hurtful things. So if you try to give up your tea and the coffee, you will feel uncomfortable for a while. But if you persevere, God will give you the victory. And when you persevere to give them up, not to use them, pray to God as well and ask Him for help, and He will give it. They do not give nature time to recover the injury they have done her. But for present relief, return to these earthful indulgences. We are talking about tea and coffee now. Nature is continually growing weaker and less capable of recovering. But if they will be determined in their efforts to persevere and overcome, abused nature will soon again rally and perform her work wisely and well without these stimulants. The whole system, under the influence of these stimulants, often becomes intoxicated. And to just that degree that the nervous system is excited by false stimulants will be the prostration which will follow after the influence of the exciting cause has been abated. So when we drink the coffee and the tea, it, rev us up for a while, but then it drops you back down. Even as it brings you up, so it depresses you. This prostration may in time be overcome by abstaining from the use of those things which created such a condition in the system. Those who indulge a perverted appetite do it to the injury of health and intellect. So in drinking the coffee and the tea, we are injuring our health and intellect. They cannot appreciate the value of spiritual things. Their sensibilities are blunted, and sin does not appear very sinful, and the truth is not regarded of greater value than earthly treasure. So the use of these stimulants, tea and coffee, is Satan's way to counteract the work of God, because they affect the mind in such a way that one cannot fully appreciate God's truth. And also sin does not appear the terrible evil that it is. There is a class who profess to believe the truth, who do not use tobacco, snuff, tea, or coffee, yet they are guilty of gratifying the appetite in a different manner. They crave highly seasoned meats with rich gravies, and their appetite has become so perverted that they cannot be satisfied with even meat unless prepared in a manner most injurious. The stomach is fevered, the digestive organs are taxed, and yet the stomach labors hard to dispose of the load forced upon it. After the stomach has performed its task, it becomes exhausted, which causes faintness. Here many are deceived and think that it is the want of food which produces such feelings, and without giving the stomach time to rest, they take more food, which for the time removes the faintness. And the more the appetite is indulged, the more will be its clamors for gratification. This faintness is generally the result of meat eating and eating frequently and too much. The stomach becomes weary by being kept constantly at work, disposing of food not the most healthful, having no time for rest. The digestive organs becomes enfeebled, hence the sense of goneness and desire for frequent eating. The remedy such require is to eat less frequently and less liberally, and be satisfied with plain, simple food, eating twice or at most 3 times a day. The stomach must have its regular periods for labor and rest. Hence, eating irregularly between meals is a most pernicious violation of the laws of health. With regular habits and proper food, the stomach will gradually recover. All right. We'll stop there for today and pick it up next time. I've been sharing with you from the first health reform visions, what was written out in 1864 from the book Spiritual Gifts, Volume 4. So I will stop there for now and continue the series next time. May the Lord bless you. Remember, 3 John 2, Beloved, I wish above all things that thou mayest prosper and be in health, even as thy soul prospereth. God bless you. Thank you for listening.